What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Saturday edition of Back Your Play BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. NFL Week 2 kicked off on Thursday. Philadelphia Eagles got a win, albeit a win is a win, but in somewhat ugly fashion over Minnesota. Got a full slate of games on Sunday, and then, of course, Monday Night Football. We'll break it down with our NFL guru, Lloyd Vance. And don't forget, you can catch him now every Monday on Broad Street South Network, Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029 The Game as well. So congrats on that, my friend. So a lot of football to get into. And listen, I'm looking at some of these lines, and I'm seeing a lot of look but don't touch type of games. You know where I'm at with that on BYP. But let's recap Thursday night for a moment or two. Eagles were laying 6.5. You might have been able to catch it at 7. If you did, congratulations, because they win this by 6. You get the, oh, by the way, touchdown late by Minnesota. But what's wrong with the Eagles offense right now in your estimation? Or is this an overreaction after 2 weeks?
Well, Q, I got a lot of people, all my Eagles fans. I'm in Eagles territory, and I got family at season ticket holders that call me, and it's a win. They're 2-0. We know
Yep.
last year all the teams that started 2-0, there were 6 of them all made the playoffs. But
Yep.
there's a couple things that I see with this team that kind of like, okay, you need to kind of worry about it. And one of the biggest things I think is Jalen Hurts is running the football too much. He ran 12 times. He was sacked 4 times. He's getting hit a lot. So teams are kind of sitting and waiting on those design runs. He had 12 rushes, probably only about less than 40 yards. So it shows you that teams are waiting on that. So the Eagles are probably going to have to lean on what they did in terms of running game, which was spectacular too. We talked about what may have not worked, but the running game was incredible. The DeAndre Swift showed that he can carry the mail. 28 rushes, 175 yards, both career highs, had a touchdown. He had 10 first downs running the ball. Obviously, you can attribute that to that great offensive line. And, in terms of the other players on the offense, I thought a little bit they forced it to get to Goddard. They gave him 7 targets. He had 6 catches, but only 22 yards. So they're forcing the ball to him. And then you had Devontae Smith with the big game, 4 catches, 131 yards, and that 63-yard touchdown. But then you had A.J. Brown, who only had 4 catches and 29 yards receiving. And you start seeing the griping on the sideline. You start wondering, is there enough balls for everybody on this offense? So,
Yeah.
in terms of offense, those were the things that I saw.
Yeah, I want to get to Brown. And listen, they thought Gainwell was going to be the primary back. Swift came in. I mean, he's a nice back. He's not a great back. I think you can contribute that to a lot of how bad Minnesota's run defense was, but still, he was averaging about 6.3. I think the coordinator eventually will figure it out. But, call it for what it is, right? I mean, Sirianni sitting there pretending like nothing happened afterwards. I mean, come on, man. You were right there on the friggin' sidelines. You saw everything. You had to calm him down. And you have a player in A.J. Brown. You've got to understand, man. Like when you're running the football like this and you're gashing a team and it's working for you, suck it up. Get in there and run block, run routes, do what you need to do, and just be a team player. And afterwards, if you notice, they tried to force the ball to him. So, I mean, to me, if there's one takeaway you take away from that game, it's the fact that A.J. Brown, and, we can sit here and say passionate, fiery. We know wide receivers. We've covered wide receivers in our career. So we know how volatile they can be. A.J. Brown is a fantastic player. But again, if you're running the football 46 times for 269 and you're averaging 5.4, it might not be your night to catch 10 balls for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you got to deal with it.
Yes, Q. And the Eagles in their history have dealt with this before. Terrell Owens was here, and I covered him and those teams. And you don't want that to become a problem where it's a locker room issue. And he needs to kind of understand it. As you said, it's all about getting the W's. Everybody will eat at a certain point in the season and in games. And yeah, it just wasn't his night. Now the Eagles, I thought they did a good job in terms of, as you were saying, time of possession and just dominating the line of scrimmage. And we're going to see if eventually he gets his catches and everything, Brown. But you do have to wonder. Mike Vrabel and some of the guys that were there and hit with him in the Titans, they kind of had issues with his attitude in the past. That's why they kind of gave up on him and traded him really for not a lot. and they said the Eagles could have him. They never gave him his extension, and they moved in another direction. So, these diva receivers, we've known in the past, they usually typically don't win Super Bowl titles. These guys are not on championship teams. He's got to fall in line. And it's up to Sirianni in particular, as you're saying. He's there, he's the coach. He needs to control that situation. I know Brian Johnson's calling the plays, and he's still kind of learning as well as offense coordinator. But it's a situation where, yes, Brown has to suck it up and be the good soldier.
Yeah, you can't blame Kirk Cousins if you're a Vikings fan. 31 of 44, 364, 4 touchdowns, played really well. And I guess now you look at Minnesota. The flip side to that is they're 0-2. They look to be a bad football team, and Jets lose Aaron Rodgers. We don't know if they're really going to back Zach Wilson, so to speak. Cousins walks after this year, right? He's looking for another contract. I mean, are we in a situation where if Minnesota, they start to keep kind of going south and lose these games where maybe Kirk Cousins can be on the trade market?
Well, that's interesting, Q. I just don't know if teams are going to trade their starting quarterback at this point in the season. Obviously, as we move towards the end of October, when the trade deadline's there, if things are trending wrong, maybe they send him somewhere. But as you said, he's in the last year of his contract, and Minnesota is a team that's trying to find their identity. In particular, they're trying to find in terms of their offense and even their defense is just not the way it was last year. They were 11-0 last year in one-score games. This year now 0-2 in both these games. And Cousins, as you said, yeah, he had a pretty good games with 4 touchdown passes, but he also had that crucial sack and fumble, which kind of turned the game on the season. He's had 3 lost fumbles and an interception. So, turnover battle was what won the Eagles this game. The Eagles, it was 4-1 in the Eagles' favor, and then they had 4 sacks. So we talked about the offense. I think the Eagles' defense is something, you're going to see a team that may have to carry them at certain points, and it's all built up front. Sweat had that big sack strip that I just talked about. Davis in the middle, only 2 tackles, but he had that sack. And then Jalen Carter, he had 2 tackles, but he's just dominant in the middle. And they really got lucky to get that young man to draft. It's going to be up to the line to kind of carry that defense because there are a lot of injuries on his team. They just had Avonte Maddox in their secondary. He has a torn pectoral, so you probably won't see him. And we already knew about Nakobe Dean earlier from last week.
Yeah, they didn't have Bradbury now passing concussion protocol as well. There's a lot of 0-1 teams that are pretty much in that must-win category. You've got the Raiders 1-0 coming off the win against Denver, traveling to Buffalo. We saw what happened with the Bills on Monday night against the Jets, giving up that punt return in overtime against the Jets and losing that game. That line was at 9.5. It's been dropped down to 8 right now. Look, you don't want to say it's desperation time, but for teams like the Giants, Cincinnati, and Buffalo, I do believe these are must-win opportunities for them. I just feel as though if Josh Allen has another type of game where and listen, to Bills Mafia, Bills fans are going to proclaim the sky is not falling. I understand all that, but your quarterback has not looked good for a while. I mean, let's be honest. For as talented as we talked about, the 42 turnovers on 50 games, he's got to come up big, man. And the Raiders are feeling themselves a little bit because they went on the road and they beat Denver to open up the season.
Yeah, and it's desperation time for these 0-1 teams. I know it's crazy. People's like, oh, calm down, Lloyd. But last year, 4 teams started 0-2. Only the Bengals turned it around to make playoffs. And the prior 3 years, every team that started 0-2 did not make the playoffs. So these are desperation games, and these teams have to fix what's right. I know it's very early and it's a 17-game marathon, but it's time for these teams to kind of step it up. And this is a good game to kind of start with because you have the Raiders, they surprised everyone pulling out that win in week 1, and Jimmy G looked very good and Fisher moving the ball. He got to Adams, and Jacobs got his touches, and defense was going after people. But the Bills just looked terrible against the Jets. You talked about the turnovers, Josh Allen forcing passes, the no type of throws, and he's going to have to pick it up and find Diggs and find Davis. An interesting line, as you were saying. I had it at 9 when I looked at it, that the Bills are favored. So, and over under 47. So I was saying this one, The Bills are going to bounce back, and they should beat the Raiders, who are coming across the country in a 1 o'clock start. So the body clock is not what it is, and the Bills got to take advantage of this. And Sean McDermott's got to get some pressure on Garoppolo, make him make mistakes. So I think the Bills will win this one, cover, and also watch for that over there.
Raiders have had 14 games decided by one score, 8 points or less since the start of last season. That's tied with Denver, who they beat to open up the season for the most over that span. 5-9 record on one score games, 6 worse in the NFL since the start of last season. That kind of tells you they can't, their team, even if this is a close game, they have to learn how to close. I mean, that's the big bugaboo in the NFL. You must learn to close games. Cincinnati, we saw their offense shut down against the new look Brownies. They've got a Baltimore team that, again, let's be honest, really wasn't tested and not a ton of resistance to open up the season. But this is a game where you talked about 4 teams starting 0-2 last year. Cincinnati was the only one to make it to the playoffs. I think this, even though it's week 2, right? Early AFC North implications right now. Again, that line, it was right around 3.5. It might sit at 3, might close at 3. This is a game where I'm actually looking at Cincinnati on the money line early on. But again, give me your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, this is a situation where the Bengals have to step it up because, as you said, yeah, last year they were able to turn around, but this year that AFC North, I believe, is going to be very competitive. And these two teams played 3 times last year.
Yep.
You had Cincinnati win in the last one, 24-17 a wild card round. Obviously, Lamar Jackson did not play in that game. And I think a big key to this is the injuries for the Ravens. The Ravens have Ronnie Stanley banged up, and they lost J.K. Dobbins last week to the Achilles. So that, they're going to have a lot of players out for this game. The Bengals, they have that desperation, and I just think they're going to be better than what they put out there last week. I think that this team behind Orlando Brown at the tackle position is trying to try to establish a run with Mixon, and then you'll have Joe Burrow, who just played awful last week. Maybe he'll get that play action, getting the ball down the field to Higgins and Chase, and this team will win it. So with that close line of 3.5, I look for Cincinnati to cover this at home. And then this is another one. The over's at 46.5. I think that Cincinnati can cover that as well. So look for a big win by Cincinnati to get back on track.
The only thing that scares me in this game, we talk about the X factor, the quarterback that can run. We saw Deshaun Watson last week rush for 45 yards on 5 carries. Pardon me. Lamar Jackson has had some really big games in his career against Cincinnati. I mean, I pulled it up, 83 yards rushing. I mean, there's a nice player prop if you can catch, 65 to 70 yards for him. I mean, grab the over on that one in 7 career games. So that to me kind of might be the difference. And Burrow, for some reason, does not play particularly well, in key stretches against Baltimore. But with all that being said, I do think Cincinnati comes in and they realize a lot is on the line, because also too, we didn't even mention it. You don't want to start 0-2 in the division, right? You want to steer clear of that. So I'm kind of leaning with you on that one. The Jets, and I bring this up only because of the aftermath of Rodgers. The Dallas Cowboys, I think we saw what they were able to do to the Giants and how that game kind of just snowballed in Dallas's favor. But I feel as though people are kind of looking at the Jets and saying, you know what, if they can play the type of defense we saw the other night, even though they lose Aaron Rodgers, but they still beat a Buffalo Bills squad, maybe, this is a game where they can kind of keep it close. Here's the problem. The quarterback tends to hold on to the ball way too long. That Dallas defense is chomping at the bit. They're coming off an opener where they had 7 sacks against Daniel Jones and Taylor, who came in mop-up duty. So to me, that would worry me a little bit. I think the line is a little too high, whether it's 8.5, 9. I'll get an updated while we get your thoughts on it. But I just think if the Jets hang around and pull it out, then it's same old Cowboys. But if the Cowboys thump them 35-10, you got to start looking at this team and saying, hey, look what they did to the Giants. Look what they just did to the Jets, albeit without Aaron Rodgers. We talk about the Jets defense. We got to now start talking about the Dallas Cowboys defense.
too. And this is a proving game. And both these teams coming here 1-0, and everybody all week, all the Dallas Cowboys people here in the area where I am, they're pounding their chest. And yeah, okay, it was a 40-0 shutout win. And the Giants kind of rolled over in it.
Yep.
But I just don't know if they're as good as they put out there in that game. And Dak Prescott still didn't put up the big numbers that you expected out of
Right.
him. CD Lamb did not get the catches. So this is going to be a fun game to watch, in particularly because you talk about the defenses. And the Jets defense can get after people. They have the Williams brothers, and then Sauce Gardner, I'm sure, will be on Diggs shadowing him the whole game. So if they can get some pressure on the Dallas Cowboys line, who's getting older, everybody always thought there was a great wall from many years back, but these guys getting old. Tyron Smith's a little banged up, and I think they're going to be able to get some pressure on Dak Prescott, and maybe he makes some mistakes. But conversely, you talk about Zach Wilson, he still puts that ball in harm's way,
Yeah.
and you just wonder, can you believe in this guy? So I'm sure they're going to try to establish, Cook and Hall and
Yep.
try to run the football first, and then he'll try to get the ball to Garrett Wilson, and Wilson should still be able to beat Diggs, who we know can be beat with play action, can beat deep. So it's going to be a fun one to watch. I did see it at 9.5. I just thought that was way too high in terms of Dallas being a home favorite. Yes, I think Dallas will win this game, but I think it'll be a lot closer. And then the over under I thought was light too. That was at 39.5 when I looked at it. So, I think they'll probably beat that score too as well. So, but I think Dallas will win this game, but you got to pump the brakes on saying they're going to Las Vegas as the NFC East and NFC champion, in terms of Super Bowl. This is a good team, but we would just want to see as the season progresses how they go along.
The Giant line was running on 4.5. It's dipped to 4. I mean, the odds makers are giving a lot of respect on the road against Arizona, who, albeit they lost to Washington, and their quarterback didn't have the best game, but their defense was able to get to Hal 5-6 times in that game. So what did we see? We saw pretty much a questionable, shoddy, weak offensive line. Thomas is still banged up. Neal's having problems. Again, offensively, Waller with the hamstring, it could be a lingering issue. Jones was under duress. It pains me to say it again, but you have to win this game if you're the Giants. I don't care if you go in there and you win it 9-6. The other thing is, and I just find it fascinating, I'm starting to hear if Daniel Jones struggles in this game and they go 0-2, you might want to start talking about sitting on him. I'm like, that's absolutely
What?
absurd. Listen, this is what you hear, right? I mean, it's crazy talk. I mean, you certainly don't want to go to 0-2. He's got to play better. He missed a couple of throws, but he was also under duress. But everyone looks at what? How much he got paid. Forget about what happened last year. What have you done for me lately? That is the NFL. I think they're going to have to run Saquon Barkley in this game. I think this is the game where actually, if you're going to play a player prop and get Jones maybe over his rushing yards, because he's going to have to use his legs to keep some plays alive. And, you push the backs against the wall, man, you got to come up swinging, whether they cover this line or not. I got to say, show me something, Brian Dable, right? Because the bloom is starting to fall off that rose right now. If they go and have a stinker and lose 25-10 to Arizona, this team's in trouble, man. I mean, you're talking about it can really go downhill fast. So run the football. You got a quarterback, doesn't have the pedigree that Daniel Jones has. That defense has to make a couple plays here and there. And both teams coming into this with disappointing week 1 efforts, looking for a win tomorrow.
It's interesting because everybody is like, all right, what did the Giants put out there on Sunday Night Football national TV? Everybody saw it. They lost 40-0 and they got shut out, but it is a desperation bowl for them. And Daniel Jones, it works conversely. It is when you're paying a guy $45 million a season, you're not benching him, right? So he's going to be out there, and they're going to lean on him. And last year he did rush for over 700 yards, and
Yep.
he was very efficient. So I expect him to be that type of player this week. Daboll's probably writing up a good game plan. We know that the Cardinals are probably one of the worst teams in the NFL. I don't do power rankings anymore, but they would probably be, 28 or higher, 28-32. When I look at this team, Josh Dobbs is at the quarterback position. He didn't play horrible week 1, but he's just not a dynamic player. And then
Fumbled
Hollywood
3
Brown.
times. He fumbled 3
Yes.
times last week. So They
Yeah.
should
So
dial it up a little bit. Yep.
he's been on three teams for a reason. And the Steelers drafted him, and they thought maybe he could be a guy for the future, but he just wasn't a good quarterback coming out of Tennessee. But I see him making mistakes, as you were just saying. That offensive line that they have is very beat up, and they're not protecting him well. So I think the Giants will get healthy, and Leonard and all these other guys on the defensive line will get healthy, getting after him. Thibodeau. I think the Giants win this one, and I think they cover that number.
The Giants are 6-0 ATS against the spread after a loss under Coach Brian Daboll. So, all right, keep it rolling. Lloyd Vance kind enough to join us on a Saturday edition of BYP previewing the Sunday slate. So we talk about some of these teams that are desperate for a win. Listen, I know, again, it is extremely early in the season. One of the games that I was kind of illustrating and highlighting all week long was Kansas City at Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville gets the win to open up the season. Had to come from behind against the Colts and put up 14 in the fourth quarter. Kansas City put up a lot of points, but again, they lost to the upstart Lions at home, mind you, to kick off the season as defending Super Bowl champs. Is this the game where all of a sudden Kansas City gets right and we say, you know what, they stubbed their toe, but the Chiefs are still the Chiefs?
Well, this is a fun one to watch. It's going to be a future playoff type situation where these two teams play down the line, and you have two great quarterbacks. And I know Patrick Mahomes is very good after a loss, and Andy Reid as well. So they've probably been in the lab trying to change some things. Obviously, two big things are going to change for that roster. You're probably going to have Travis Kelce back from that
Yep.
bone bruise in his knee. I've heard he's had a good week of practice. He's going to be out there. And then obviously Chris Jones got his extension. They're going to put him in the middle of that defense, and that'll help them stop the run. So that's going to be a big key to this game. Getting pressure on Trevor Lawrence and then stopping ATN and not allowing him to get that ball down the field to Jones. And Ridley is a huge piece in this game. He had a great game last week. He came off after a year off. He's a guy they're going to have to cover. And KC's back in. We talked about it with Spagnuolo. Sometimes they can get beat deep. So I've been back and forth on this pick. I just think that Patrick Mahomes will find a way to win this game. Obviously, it's on the road, and
3.5.
it's going to be a tight one. But I think Harrison Butker kicks a field goal and they win this one. But that's how close it's going to be.
Wow, you get the hook in there. That's got to be a little trouble. A lot of models have them winning by about 4.1 points. I can see them winning this type of game 38-33, 38-34, 38-24. Jags are 5-0 outright as home dogs under Dougie P, including the playoffs. So just a little nugget for those viewing on BYP. Let's see what else kind of peeks out. I'm not really, Bears, Bucks, Seattle Lions. How about Green Bay and Atlanta, right? Because we're seeing, all right, you have Atlanta, they got the win. I'm not a big Falcons team. I'm not a big believer in that quarterback. And then Green Bay, I thought one of the quarterbacks that had to perform really well to open up the season was Jordan Love. All of a sudden, forget about the distant memory of Aaron Rodgers when he put up those types of numbers against the Bears. And it doesn't matter who you put back there. Green Bay has always owned Chicago, but they put 30 plus points in there. Now they have Atlanta, and let me just get the update. I mean, it was sitting at 1.5. This seems to be a game that could potentially hit the over at 40.5. But as I pull up, see what some of these books have active as we speak, initial thoughts on this game.
Yeah, this is two good young teams, and they're both fighting to get to that playoff level of kind of mid-range NFL teams, and it's a big spot for Atlanta at home. So Arthur Smith has got to get this team ready to go. But as you were saying, Desmond Ridder, when I watch him, he's still very much a game manager. Yeah, he did not throw the ball more than 20 times that one. Yes, he has Bijan Robinson and Algier. But Drake London didn't even have a single catch, their former first rounder, and then Pitts did not have a lot of catches as well. So Atlanta's going to try to control the game. I think a big thing is Atlanta's defense, led by Bates, who had those interceptions last week that kind of turned the game. They got to get some turnovers from Jordan Love. Jordan Love was very good at protecting the football, and they did a nice job. Now, they probably won't have Jones, who has that bad hamstring injury, and Dobbs as well is kind of banged up with his hamstring. So they're hoping Christian Watson can play. Their former first round receiver, and he can come out there and make some plays. But I think the Packers are just a better team when you look at it on paper in terms of a full roster. So I think they'll be able to get some pressure on Ritter. He'll make some mistakes, and the Packers will win this one, probably a field goal game, and cover that number.
So the line was 1, then it went to 1.5 Green Bay, then back down to 1. Now it's sitting at 1 for Atlanta. It's been fluctuating. I mean, these teams haven't played since 2020. They haven't played in Atlanta since 2017. But again, if you look inside the numbers again, this kid Ritter thrown more interceptions in his first 5 career starts, 3 and 2. So that's not a good thing. I can see this as a, again, 30-20 Packers win. They're 41-26 ATS under LaFleur, which is the best mark in the NFL since 2019, minimum 40 games. Battle of 1-0 teams, San Francisco and the Rams. And again, it's kind of the theme, right? When we're talking about short road dogs, 4, 3.5, 3, 2.5. This line, San Francisco, I think we're going based on their performance against the Steelers last week, where they were able to really get to Pickett. That defense is just on an absolute another level. And for everyone that was wondering if Purdy was 100% healthy or not, the kid looked really good to open up the season. Didn't really have to do too much because that game wasn't competitive. Now I kind of see a couple books have the line at 7.5, total 45 shade to the over. This is a game where I just think, again, the 49ers have owned the Rams. They've won 6, 7, 8 straight. I believe it's 8. I'm sure you'll confirm that. And they're the better team. I mean, Stafford, he didn't have a touchdown pass to open up the season, right? I mean, we're talking about Matthew Stafford. So he's got to be able to throw the ball. He's got to be able to have time and protection back there. I don't see that happening. I think San Francisco's defense is going to take over this game. And I'll just give you one nugget. When you think about the ATS, Brock Purdy is 8-1 outright and 7-2 ATS is the 49ers starting quarterback, including the playoffs. That's a huge number.
Right. Yes. And when you look at the Niners, right now, I'd have to say that they're the best team in football. They're in complete control. Don't forget, that was on the road in Pittsburgh, which used to be a tough place to play. The Niners are riding an 11-game winning streak at this time. Last year, they did sweep the Rams in the series, and I just expect them to be at home and to take care of some business. It's a situation where the Rams, yes, they look good. Stafford finally came back and kind of was himself. But Puka Nacua, who's a good rookie receiver, he's battling a hamstring injury that they're not sure he's going to play in the game, and that could be a key thing. But I think in terms of the Niners defensive line with Armstead and those guys, they're going to get after Stafford, and he'll have to make some mistakes. We talked about in our season preview how the Rams offensive line has just always been in flux, and last week they had a good week against Seattle, and I think this is a tough spot for them. I think that the Niners go on the road and they get the pressure that they need, and then in terms of playing on that turf, the Niners have some speed with Deebo Samuel and Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. They're going to be able to move the football on that Rams defense as long as they control Aaron Donald. So I expect the Niners to win and to move. That number's kind of high to you. I say they win, but I just don't know if they're going to get that high of a number. I think they win by a touchdown.
Here's, a game interesting for certain reasons. So Judy's set to make his season debut Sunday for Denver. Sean Payne did a lot of talking, man, and their own one. He opened up the season with an onside kick. Washington's 1-0, and I've said it for the past year. I'm going to keep saying it, and I know everyone hates when I say it. They're going to disagree with me. They're going to say I'm crazy. Russell Wilson is cooked. I don't care if Russell Wilson goes 20 of 25 for 288 on Sunday. He's not the same quarterback. And again, I'm just going to keep driving home this point to constantly annoy the let it cook, the Bronco Nation fan base. They're going to bench him at some point during the season. Sean Payton has zero confidence in Russell Wilson. Sean Payton has zero patience with Russell Wilson. And look, he had a couple touchdown passes the other day. That's fine. I don't even think he cracked 200 yards passing. I don't like them in this spot. I do like the Washington Commanders to win this game outright, and I think they would be that surprise team to start the season, kind of like the Giants last year, 2-0. So I like Washington in this spot.
And it's funny. I was watching that game, and all I could hear is I kept hearing Russell Wilson is cooked. I kept hearing your voice, and yeah, he's 27 to 34, but he only threw for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns, and it's a situation where you just you're right. He doesn't look like himself. He's still tentative to run. He's putting balls in kind of harm's way. Yeah, maybe Judy coming back will help them, and they can lead on, Williams and T. Ryan, and maybe they can run the football and open things some up for him. But Gulich, their tight end is banged up. He's not going to play in this game. When I look at the Commanders, their defense, as we said, has all those first rounders, Payne, Allen, and the rest of those guys.
Yep.
They're getting Chase Young back from the neck injury, so he's going to play in this game. And you have a Broncos defensive line that's often been on roller skates. They bring McGlinchey over, but he's even had some problems. So you're right, Sean Payton, a coach who's coming in there with little patience. And if they lose this game, which they lost last week by 1 point, if they lose another close game, his head may pop off. And the next thing you know, he is making wholesale changes. So he's remaking this roster in his image. The new ownership group, the Walton Penner group, they put their eggs in the coach's basket. So I could foresee where something happens with the quarterback and the rest of his roster, where if they're losing games like they did last week, and fans are disgruntled, they'll say enough's enough. Let's move in another direction. But this is a pivotal game. And when I look at Washington, Hal did a nice job. Good young quarterback. He was able to run the football and throw it. And I do think that Washington goes in there and wins this game.
Broncos are 1-7 ATS as favorites since the start of last season. They're 12-25-2 ATS in that role since 2017. And remember, Russell Wilson in his career had some really great numbers with Seattle, as they were road dogs and, of course, home favorites many, many moons ago. It's a different animal. I mean, look, they might need a field goal late. That's fine. I'll take it. I still like Washington with the points. And then quickly, got about 30 seconds.
Sure.
Real quick. Cleveland, Pittsburgh again, AFC North desperate for a win. We saw that defense from Cleveland shut down Cincinnati's offense and Joe Burrow. Is that going to be the same story on Monday night when they take on the Steelers?
No, I think this is the Steelers getting ready. Mike Tomlin, he's very angry, and they've always had a very good record against the Browns. You have Watt, who had 3 sacks last week, and I expect him to have a big game on Monday Night Football. Watson's not as good as he looked. Yeah, they won 24-3, but it was sloppy conditions, and Cincinnati didn't really show up. I expect the Steelers to beat them kind of big in this one.
Hey, do not forget to, and I actually saw, did you see, well, I mean, I'll give you the teaser. Did you see the new intro to your show on Broad Street South?
We're excited, Angel, who's running everything over there, and he's doing a nice job, and I'm excited. We're going to have a second week of the show, and we're eventually going to start getting some good quality guests on air from my insider community, and we're going to recap what happened Sunday, and then we'll talk about the biggest news and notes around the league and whatever I'm hearing. So it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to it.
And that'll be live, and you can catch that. It's Lloyd Vance Insider Football on Broad Street South. Also 102.9 The Game. That's every Monday night, 7 p.m. live. And of course, you hear Lloyd multiple times during the week on BYP to not only preview the games, but also do Vance's view on Tuesdays to recap them as well. All right, brother. I always appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend. May all your bets be prosperous. Put a little coin in the pocket, as we like to say, and we'll do it again on Tuesday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.